Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for the Untangle community webinar. Today we'll be going over our latest version 13.2. And I have with us Dirk Morris, our founder and CPO. He'll be taking us through the changelog as well as giving us a demonstration of all the new features. My name is Shannon Bonfiglio and I am your host today. So if you have any questions, we have a few people on hand to help with that. Do you want to go to the next slide? Yeah. So if you do select to use a phone, you will need to dial in and use the access code provided. You can use your computer audio. It just depends what you prefer. Any questions you have, you submit them on the right-hand side. We have a few members on hand to help answer questions, and we have left some time at the end of this for Dirk to go over some questions. Reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to rewatch or share this recording with anyone you wish. Keep that in mind. And as always, if we don't get to your question or if you have a very specific question, then you can always email them through sales@untangle.com or support@untangle.com. And with that, I will pass it over to Dirk.
Thanks, Shannon. Thanks, everybody, for joining. I see some of our regulars have joined, so it's good to see you guys again. Should be fairly brief today. We're just going to go through the 13.2 changes. I will give a brief demonstration of some of the changes and talk about some of our new appliances. And then, as always, if you have questions about any of the stuff in 13.2 or otherwise, please type them into the chat box. I will try to address them throughout the presentation. With that, I'll go ahead and jump right in. As always, I am going to start with the changelog. So to get to these, just go to wiki.untangle.com or click on the help anywhere in the product. I'll take you to this page. Click on changelogs and click on 13.2. This shows all the major noteworthy changes. Obviously, if you want to dig into every little change, there are tens of thousands of those. So those aren't in here, but as always, the GitHub is public and you can read through those. But this is most of the noteworthy changes that we'll go through. So starting out, the administration interface, we made a whole bunch of tweaks and polishing to the administration interface. For those of you who've been around for a while, you know we did a completely new admin interface in 13.0. It looked very similar to the previous version, but under the covers, it was actually a completely new code. We did that for a bunch of reasons, for long-term maintenance and long-term usability. So we continued to polish and improve on some of the things that we learned by doing that. One of the things we did was we simplified the dashboard. So let me switch over here to the dashboard. Let me zoom out a little bit. Oh, wrong way. So you can see more interesting things. So it used to be every single widget had its own setting about what the time frame it showed. So this looks like about 6 hours right now. So it used to be every single widget had a different time frame setting, which made it difficult to just say, I want to see the last 5 hours, because you had to change it in every single widget. So we actually changed this setting to be a global dashboard setting. So if you go here on Manage Widgets, you can set your time frame to be whatever you want to see on the dashboard, and that applies to everything in the dashboard. So if I change that to 12, it would change the view to show everything being 12. I think the default is still 1 hour. But everybody prefers something different. So hopefully that will simplify the dashboard a little bit and the dashboard maintenance. We added a new policy widget. For those who use Policy Manager a lot, this is useful. So basically here is our Policy Manager widget for this machine. Now this machine only has 3 policies, one of which is the default policy. We have a special policy for the guest wireless. And we also have a special no internet policy, which basically just blocks you from getting internet, which we can use for several purposes. But the policy over widget just shows the different policies and generally how much traffic is going through each. So you can see all the traffic currently. There's nobody on our guest Wi-Fi right now. All the traffic currently, 900 sessions-ish, 800K a second, which is pretty much all the traffic on the network right now, is going through the default policy. And you can see some general statistics about the apps that are installed, which are running. The default policy has 8 installed applications. You can even click on the little down arrow and see which ones are. So this is like a quick navigation system. So if I say, hey, if I've got 20 policies and I quickly want to get to the firewall policy for default, policy, I can click here, and that takes me to the default policy firewall. So it's a nice navigational tool if you quickly want to get without going to apps and switching the policy and doing all that. You can do it the quick way now with that. And you can also just jump to the policy by clicking on that arrow. So now I'm on the no internet policy. So for those of you with lots of policies, lots of policy management to do, this should make your life a little bit easier. It also gives you a nice overview of what policies are in use currently with the sessions and the traffic going through the system. Moving on, there's a new widget also for administration notifications. Administration notifications are these little guys up here. This is stuff that we think is important for the administrator to know about. So whenever you log in, it runs a series of tests that looks for common misconfiguration or common issues, things that we think the admin should know about. And that is now showed in a widget as well as up here. Where is it? Right here. There's the administration notification. So if we go to manage widgets, you'll see notifications right here. So hopefully that'll make those things a little more visible. What we were finding is that in this case, like you tend to get machines in the field tend to get some notifications that are important, but not really. In this case, it's warning us that spam blockers installed, but we're using DNS servers that are not optimal. But this server doesn't actually do any spam scanning, so we ignore those. The problem is let's say there was an important one, like your disk space is really low. I would tend to ignore this because it's always there. Every time I log in, it's there. And that's not a good thing. So we think making a widget would make it slightly more visible. We may at some point remove this and just use the widget only. We changed the way, actually we changed a lot with the way you edit reports and the way you create reports from scratch. So let me briefly go into some of this. Now, editing reports and creating reports is probably one of the most complicated things that Untangle has to offer in terms of actual usage, because reports are basically very complex SQL queries. So there's a lot of fields. The best way to go and create a report is to go into an existing report that's pretty similar and click on the settings thing, and then change some things. Maybe you want, this times 2, and then just save it as a new report. So that's a little bit easier than creating a brand new report from scratch, but you can create a report now from scratch. So this is my new report, which is basically just the same thing I did, but times 2. We also improved the way you can move this little guy, change the styles, and added new color pickers and things like that. If you want to manually specify your colors, you can do so. So all this has been improved and should be a lot easier to work with and build your custom reports. Again, this is one of the things that's the most powerful thing in Untangle, because everything's stored in a database. You can create these custom reports. And then when you're done, if you want, you can add the dashboard. So that's my top categories by request donut graph. So if I go back here, I now see at the very end, I have my top categories by request donut graph. So hopefully the whole report editing and creation, you can also now import and export reports. Wrong one. So down here you can say I want to import. So let's say you worked really hard on a report, a specific report. You can now browse and choose a specific report to import, and it will add the report. So if you need help crafting reports, one thing to do, jump on the forums, email support, something like that, saying, here's what I'm going for. And we can now help craft a report and then export that specific report and then make it easier for you to import. So you don't have to literally take a screenshot and copy paste and things like that. Let me read the questions real quick. I don't see any questions that have not been answered at this time, so I'm just going to keep going. I covered that. You can now import and export the local directory again. That was something from functionality we lost actually a couple versions ago, so that's back. And there's also been a whole lot of work on the VPN applications. I'd say that's the majority of the work in this release, aside from all the work in the administration UI, was a lot around the VPNs. A lot of people are using VPNs these days for a lot of different purposes, a lot of different use cases. So we put a lot of effort into the different VPN applications. Starting with OpenVPN, one of the most requested features for OpenVPN of all time was the ability to do some sort of two-factor authentication. So we added that ability to do two-factor authentication, which basically means you're going to authenticate just like the old way, which, by the way, this is completely optional. You do not have to turn on two-factor authentication, but you can. So back when you used to right-click and say connect, it would authenticate you with a certificate that was distributed with the client that was sent when you set up a user. Now you can require an extra step, which is a username password, if you want to have, quote, two-factor. Two-factor just means you're going to authenticate them in two different ways. So you can now enable username password authentication, and then you need to select what you're going to authenticate against. So the options are local directory, a radius server if you have that configured in directory connector, your Active Directory server, or anything in directory connector that supports directory lookup. So those are your options to say, you know, when the OpenVPN server is given a username password, how I'm going to go authenticate that. So this is useful for larger organizations that say want to distribute a whole lot of VPN clients to remote users, but want to make sure if, say, a laptop is stolen, that the user can't get access to the internal network. This would allow them to, every time they connect to the VPN, type in their username and password.
There was a question about when they'll receive the 13.2 update.
Oh, I should have started with that. Thank you. As always, we roll out updates over time. So 13.2 is not available to almost all the boxes in the field at this time. We will slowly roll out the update. I would suspect everybody will have the update by end of February. There's a lot of reasons we do it this way. Actually, we still have one issue that we need to fix with actually OpenVPN username password authentication, and another fix with the VMware image that need to go up before we start rolling that out. But if you really want it now, contact us at support, open a support ticket and say you want to be put on the early access queue or the priority queue. Priority queue means you always get the updates first. Early update queue means you're going to get this specific update now, and that will allow you to upgrade to 13.2. Otherwise, just keep automatic upgrades on or not, and whenever it becomes available to your server, you can upgrade. Additionally, if you have a whole bunch of servers, my suggestion would be you can wait, turn off. If you manage the upgrades manually, just turn them all off, and you can do it all from Command Center. Just log into your account at untangle.com. There was a couple questions about Tunnel VPN. I will get to Tunnel VPN. Oh, also we did update, well, actually Webfool. So you guys all thank Webfool. Hopefully he's on the webinar. Usually he is. He updated the installer that gets distributed as part of OpenVPN. So if you go in here, you say download client, it builds these OpenVPN clients, and it does it for several different operating systems. So for example, one of these is a Windows setup exe file that makes it very easy to set up Windows clients. So Webfool updated the exe file, so it now includes the latest version of OpenVPN. So we should all be very thankful for him for doing that, keeping us on top of the latest version. I did see one question about some tags. I will hopefully address that in just a second. Actually, now you can delete tags on the host table. Otherwise, you don't need to. You can set them to expire whenever you want. The question is, when you're tagging host, is there a way to automatically remove them? You can set it up to where they expire automatically, or you can go in and edit them now. You didn't used to be able to edit them. That's a new thing. And yes, I don't want to save that. A new thing in 13.2. Let's see if I have any hosts with tags. I don't, unfortunately. Let's see if I have any hosts with tags here. So I could click here if I wanted to get rid of the engineering tag on, oh, actually this laptop, and then I could save down here. So I didn't used to be able to do that. There's very few things you can edit in the host table because this is kind of like an in-memory thing. But one of the things you can now do is go remove tags on the host table. Continuing on with IPSec, there's a whole lot of IPSec changes. Essentially what we did is we dug in really hard in IPSec, especially when connecting to other vendors, and studied what are the functions that people need and how do we improve the reliability of IPSec in general. IPSec is a very complicated protocol. There's lots of different ways to do it. There's lots of different devices to connect to. And it's not particularly stable as far as VPNs go in our experience compared to other options. So we dug in a lot to that, and hopefully this latest IPSec VPN has better defaults, added some functions that we think will improve the stability, and we added some functions to help you monitor the up-down status of your VPN. So for one, we added events now where you can go and see, you can configure things to say, I want to ping this server on the other side, and I want to log this event. And so you can set up alerts to say, I'm pinging 192.168.1.100, and if that ever doesn't ping, I want it to log that event, and I want an alert saying the tunnel's down. And also we added events to log when the tunnel status goes up and down. So now you can go back and say, here's when the tunnel went up, here's when the tunnel went down. So this is all in reports. This didn't use, there were no events for this previously. So hopefully this will help administrators using IPSec to stay on top and go back and debug and look at the status, when the status changes their IPSec tunnels, and hopefully why. And we also added a lot of functionality to help restart the tunnels under different scenarios. It turns out that a lot of scenarios, the tunnels do not come back up when they go down. So hopefully we've added a lot of logic in 13.2 to improve the way the tunnels come back up. And we also added some new functionality like Diffie-Hellman groups and things like that. So for those of you using IPSec VPN, I would give the new version a try. I think it'll be much more stable in a lot of aspects, and there's much more reporting and data available around the status of the tunnel. Give me 1 second. I am reading the questions. There was a question about the OpenVPN bug about user password authentication, two-factor authentication. We're aware of that. We're going to be pushing out a fix for that soon. And when we know about stuff like that, generally we don't roll out the new version to the auto upgrade people, just because we don't want to push out things that are known issues. In this case, it doesn't really matter because this is a new functionality, so it's not like it would cause a problem on any upgrade. But it's still just something we generally don't want to do. If there's a known issue, we don't want to push it out. So hopefully we're getting a new build out shortly to fix the username password OpenVPN issue. All right, moving right along. Tunnel VPN, somebody asked briefly before I jump into the changes, what's the difference between Tunnel VPN and OpenVPN? The use case is a little bit different. Tunnel VPN actually uses OpenVPN to connect to cloud providers, but Tunnel VPN is generally for an outbound full tunnel VPN. So for example, you want to connect to a security service and send all your traffic through that, or you want to connect to a privacy VPN to send all your traffic through that. That's a use case where you use Tunnel VPN. It's for full tunnel connectivity of your local Untangle to a remote VPN. OpenVPN can be a client and a server, but not a full tunnel client. So if you're using one where you want to send all your traffic through a VPN outbound and access the internet basically through a VPN, that's when you want to use Tunnel VPN. So we added a whole bunch of improvements to Tunnel VPN. Tunnel VPN was new in the last version. We learned a lot about it. We added a lot of reconnect logic. It turns out a lot of the VPN providers don't like people staying connected all the time. So OpenVPN already has an ability to reconnect automatically when it loses a tunnel. However, a lot of the providers figured out a way to work around this so that you do get disconnected periodically. And the way they do that is they return basically saying your credentials are invalid periodically so that OpenVPN will exit and no longer try to reconnect. So we added an external process to monitor the status of the tunnel and then restart the whole process if necessary. So if you're using really common providers like ExpressVPN, things like that, hopefully this will help you stay connected all the time. Clearly that's not something I want, even though it very much seems like the whole purpose. This will hopefully help you using that. We added a lot of events similar to IPSec for status changes of the tunnels. So now you can go back and see when the tunnel came up and went down. And all that's available in reports. So I don't think either of these have OpenVPN or Tunnel VPN running, so I can't show you the events. Yes, there's a question about NordVPN. NordVPN, we've also seen frequently disconnecting users. It's really annoying. I don't know why they do it, but anyway, this should help solve that issue. It just means you're going to be disconnected for a few seconds every couple hours. And then it will notice that the process didn't reconnect and exit it and just fire it back up again. Some small captive portal changes. We added a ability to block SSL connections instead of redirecting them to the block page. This is not what I think you'd want to do in most cases, but in some cases people get really confused by the SSL warning that they get when they get redirected to a captive portal page. So in this case, if people get really confused by that, you can outright choose to block it, in which case they'll just get a I can't connect error instead of a privacy warning about the cert being invalid. And the reality of SSL is there's no solution to this. The whole point of SSL is to encrypt and authenticate who you're talking to. So if that user goes to Google and they get redirected to a captive portal page, they're going to get a warning because your local server is not Google. That's the whole point of SSL. There's no way around that. You can do SSL inspection, but only if you essentially have the ability to distribute the certificate authority to all the endpoint devices, which is not realistic in most scenarios. So SSL is just part of a pain dealing with on captive portal side. The reality is most OSs now detect captive portals pretty gracefully, but some don't. And this is why when you go to a hotel, every hotel has the same issue. No matter how big the hotel, they all have SSL warnings when you try to go to an SSL site. So hopefully that will help for people who don't want to confuse their users. They can just choose to block it instead. We also added, changed the way we did MAC address tracking. So for those of you who do captive portal via MAC address instead of IP address, there's two ways to kind of quote, identify users. Now you can use MAC addresses instead, and we changed the way the logic works, and hopefully it's simpler. Basically now it will prefer, if you enable this option, it will prefer MAC address if it's there, otherwise it'll fall back to IP address. We had some issues with that in the previous version. Moving right along, application control, it updates a whole lot of new signatures. I won't go into those now, but there's a lot of new signatures to help identify, specifically around VPN services. Those are going through your Untangle. So now we'll say, hey, look, this user is using a VPN service. And specifically identify which service it is, like, hey, this is Express and things like that. Directory Connector has some nice improvements. You can now run queries against multiple servers. We added a new condition called user in domain. And we also added some nice changes to the actual agent that gets installed in the Directory Connector server, including notifications to the firewall when groups changes and things like that, so it can rebuild the group map. NetFlow was added. NetFlow is basically a standard way to export data about your network to a third-party device. Oops, wrong place. So you can now enable NetFlow here. Essentially what you would do is you run a NetFlow collector, which collects NetFlow information, which is a standard format. And then if you had 10 untangles, you could say, I want to send all my NetFlow information to this one NetFlow aggregator so that you have NetFlow reports over your whole network. This is a Cisco originated protocol, but a lot of people use this protocol. So for those of you running lots of different sites, if you're a NetFlow shop, hopefully that will be useful. If you give it out, if you try it and you have feedback, let us know. We added very simple options that basically say what version of NetFlow and where do you want to send it. But if anybody uses it and has any feedback, please jump on the forums or email us and let us know what you think. As we covered earlier, some of the fields in the host table are now editable. The host table previously was not savable. You couldn't save it, but now you can go in and remove tags, which previously was very difficult. We added some logging, and then there's tons and tons of bug fixes that I did not cover, specifically around the UI, but also just everywhere in general. Let me switch back here. One other thing I wanted to talk about, and then I'll loop back through the questions real quick, is we have 4 new appliances available. We're trying this out for a limited time, so these may not be around forever. But essentially, we rolled out 4 new appliances, the U25X, U25XW, which is the U25X with a wireless card in it, and then the same with the 50 and the 50X. Some of you may recognize some of the community members have been running boxes like this for a while. They're very powerful and also very affordable boxes. So we're really excited to roll them out. I think it's the most affordable appliances we've ever had. They do full gigabit. The U25X has 2 network cards and then a Wi-Fi card if you want the W. And the 50 has 4. And it's a little faster and has more memory. So if you have 50 devices, around 50 devices, this is a more suitable device, or if you just want the 4 network cards. But they're great little units. They're tiny. They don't get very hot. They're very reasonably cooled, and they're completely quiet. So they're great for smaller sites, retail sites, things like that. Let me go back through the questions real quick and see if we didn't cover anything. I think we have most of the questions covered. There's a question about application control, false positives. I don't know if that's still an issue. They were asking about misidentification of a specific protocol to google.com. I don't know. I would give it a try in 13.2. We did update the what's called the classification daemon, which is not really signatures. It's kind of heuristics and signatures and a whole bunch of different AI techniques to identify as traffic. So it will likely be different and improved in the next version. But it's for every one of these battles that we're always trying to stay on top of with the identification of applications in general. So I'll give it a try in 13.2, and if you have an issue, contact us. Usually there's a workaround or 2 that we'll do to work around any kind of misidentification or things like that. And there was a question about directory connector. Yes, directory connector will allow, I believe, authentication through multiple domain controllers now.
Do you want to show where people can download the?
That's a good idea.
Just before we.
To get the new version, again, if you already have a server, the updates will be coming probably by the end of February, but if you want it now, contact us. You can download 13.2 on the download page. Again, we have all the different options available. There's a fix coming out for the VMware image today. The 64-bit, 32-bit, the couple different firmwares for the appliances, off-the-shelf appliances that we support, and the OVA for the VMware. And likely, heads up, that the 32-bit will probably at some point be going away. It's just an older architecture. There's very little reason to use it anymore. So at some point, that may be dropped from the downloads. Because nowadays, even if you have less than 4 gigs of RAM, the 64-bit version is fine. So I would suggest the 64-bit version on all new installs if you're doing bare metal installs on your own hardware. Great. If you have any more questions that we didn't cover, I apologize. Please reach out to us or jump on the forums, forums.untangle.com, and we'll be on there all day. Hopefully, we can answer any questions you have about the new version or otherwise.
Great. Thanks, Dirk. So if you have questions, you can keep rolling them in. We'll be on. Just have a few more slides to do. So if you're not aware, RSA conference is one of the largest cybersecurity conferences in the country. It's in San Francisco at the Moscone Center. Untangle is going to be exhibiting there. So if you're in the area or are traveling to San Francisco around April 16th, we'd love for you to stop by, see the booth. We're going to be announcing some exciting things at the show, and we'd love to just meet you and chat with you. So just a few promotions that we're doing right now. If you haven't heard or gotten our emails about this, we have a trade-in, trade-up program. So if you have a competitor's product and want to switch over to an Untangle product, we have a program for you to trade that in, or if you want to trade up your older appliance or subscription and trade it up to a better one, we have some special pricing for that. So give us a call or contact your sales rep today. And then we know a lot of you use us at home, and we love you guys. And so we want to offer you, those users, a promotion also if they bring us to work as well. So there's some special pricing discounts for that as well. So give us a call or email us and we'll be happy to work that out. Is there any more questions, Dirk, that came in? Let's see. As mentioned, the update will be rolled out over the next month. And we've mentioned this a few times. If you want it now, you can email us so you can get that right now. I think that's about it. So we have a variety of resources, our YouTube channel where this will be posted along with, we have a couple quick videos that our other sales engineer, Chad, has done just to help you get a brief overview if you don't want to sit through this webinar again. Our current release page has all the major details as well as the nitpick ones. We have our wiki, which is our technical documentation, the forums, which is our open community for people to ask questions. And as always, we're here, whether it be sales or support. If you want to know if you can take advantage of a promo, please contact us at support@untangle.com to see what applies for you. Thanks, Dirk, for the great demo. If we didn't get to your question, we apologize. Please email us and we'll be sure to get back to you. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Have a good day.